welcome back to Foss & Company's Tax Credits Today podcast. I'm Michael Yager, Vice President of Investments for Foss & Company. I work with institutional investors and large corporations to direct capital that is set aside for federal and state taxes into high-impact, tax credit-generating projects with a focus on renewable energy and carbon capture. Today, I'm joined by Dawn Lima, Vice President of Renewable Energy and Sustainable Technologies for Foss & Company. For this episode, we are diving into bioenergy, its various forms, and how it plays a vital role in the path toward a more sustainable future. Welcome, Dawn.
Thanks, Michael. Excited to be here today and chat about bioenergy and the importance of tax equity in this industry.
Excellent. Let's start by reviewing the basics. What is bioenergy?
So bioenergy is any form of energy that's derived from organic materials, such as agricultural waste. So dairy farm waste would be a form of bioenergy. Crops, forestry residue, residential trash, and any other form of organic waste.
Okay, is biogas a form of bioenergy?
Yes, certainly. Biogas is a form of bioenergy. Biogas is simply a gas, mostly comprised of methane, which is the molecule CH4. It's biogas that has been produced from the degradation of organic waste. And really, biogas is produced naturally in environments where there's low levels of oxygen and degradable organic matter present. So atmospheric emissions of biogas from natural and man-made sources contribute to climate change due to methane's potent greenhouse gas properties. Biogas technology permits the recovery of this biogas through the use of an anaerobic digester, where the organic matter is sealed in a vessel, and then the biogas that's produced by the degradation is captured, and it can be used for fuel for heating, electrical generation, mechanical power, and other uses.
That's very interesting. Now, many of our listeners may be familiar with renewable natural gas, or RNG. Is RNG a form of bioenergy?
It is, because what RNG is, or as you said, renewable natural gas, it really is just biogas that has been cleaned to pipeline quality. So what that means is biogas in its original form, when it's first produced, has amounts of carbon dioxide in it, so CO2. It has nitrogen, sulfur, and other impurities. It also has a water component. And for pipeline quality, those impurities and the water has to be removed. And that's really the difference between biogas and renewable natural gas, is that it's been cleaned up for pipeline grade. It's different than fossil natural gas or brown gas because it comes from the degradation of organic matter.
So you've already touched on this a little bit, but could you share with us what are some of the environmental benefits of RNG?
So one of the top benefits of renewable natural gas, or RNG, is the reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So by capturing the degradation of the organic matter and capturing that biogas that's being produced and converting it into a usable form, which is the renewable natural gas, we're actually reducing the amount of methane that is being released into the atmosphere. And methane heats up the atmosphere 25 times more than a pound of carbon dioxide does. So it's very impactful that we can avoid methane emissions. And so for every kilogram of methane that's emitted, it's equivalent to expressing it as 29.8 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So methane as a greenhouse gas is much more potent than CO2. And so capturing the methane and converting it into a usable form of renewable natural gas has a significant impact on reducing emissions and a positive impact on the atmosphere because we're preventing it from being released. Another, important aspect or an environmental benefit of RNG is just the utilization of waste materials. So right now there's a push to live a more sustainable lifestyle as a human species. But even with our best efforts, we are not going to ever get to a point where we don't generate any waste. So projects where we're turning waste into energy, which is really what the bioenergy sector is all about, is such a great sustainable solution because we are taking waste and we're converting it to a usable form of energy. And then the third aspect, environmental benefit of RNG, is the sustainable energy generation. So the biogas market right now in the US isn't significantly large, but it is expected to grow here and be over 37 billion by the year 2028. And really, when we think about it, the US is behind Europe in terms of the number of operational biogas facilities. So as of 2023, the US had more than 2,400 sites producing biogas in all 50 states. And just to break it down, that's 473 anaerobic digesters on farms, 1,269 water resource recovery facilities using an anaerobic digester, 102 standalone systems that digest food waste, and 566 landfill gas to RNG projects. And for comparison, Germany alone has nearly 10,000 operating digesters, and some communities are essentially fossil fuel free because of the waste to energy operations that support those communities.
Wow, biogas and RNG hold a lot of promise, but there's still a lot of work to be done. How did the passing of the IRA impact the RNG industry?
So the IRA was the Inflation Reduction Act that passed into law in August of 2022, and it was a $369 billion incentive plan, and it really expanded and extended numerous tax credits and incentive programs for the development of clean energy projects. And the biogas industry is one sector that benefited tremendously from the legislation, as the Act expanded the investment tax credit, or the ITC, under the code, Section 48 of the Internal Revenue Code, to include qualified biogas facilities that begin construction before 2025. And by adding the language qualified biogas property to the eligible resources for the ITC, the IRA allowed for systems generating biogas for other purposes, including the sale of renewable natural gas, to benefit from the federal tax credit. So the IRA, including the biogas ITC into the language, really is a benefit to biogas project developers, as it helps them offset the upfront costs of constructing the projects. With the IRA, the base rate for the ITC is 6%, which means that a project developer can claim 6% of the eligible capital costs for an ITC, and then that amount increases to 30% if they meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement. So, just in theory, a developer who spends $100 million to produce a biogas property project could monetize 30 million in tax credits. And, another point is that the biogas that is produced has to contain at least 52% methane to qualify for the credit. And there's other qualifications that are required too, but it has to have at least 52% methane. So the passing of the IRA and this opportunity to monetize their ITC really has been a new and exciting opportunity for the biogas RNG developers. And now monetizing their tax credits really becomes an integral part of their project financing. So another point to note here was that the IRS actually released some new proposed guidance for the ITC, the investment tax credit, and included in that proposed guidance is some additional clarifications and requirements that impacted the biogas sector. And in particular for RNG projects, the proposed guidance would exclude the gas upgrading equipment, which is really very necessary to upgrade the biogas to pipeline quality, as I explained earlier. And so, unfortunately, this has had a very negative impact on the RNG industry because it has introduced policy uncertainty around the ability to monetize their ITC and, of the equipment, what equipment would be eligible in the ITC calculation and what equipment may be deemed ineligible. We are now in the post-IRA period, and really the biogas industry has benefited greatly from the financial support of this incentive program. There is certainly a lot of projects being developed, and the incentive to be able to monetize the ITC is very attractive to the developers. And, on the other side, for the corporations in the U.S. that have a tax liability, they really have a unique opportunity to help accelerate the development of this sustainable energy and really help decarbonize U.S. transportation fuels if they direct their tax liability into an investment in a sustainable energy project. The unique aspect about renewable natural gas is that it's interchangeable with fossil natural gas or brown gas, as it's also called. It's a like-for-like molecule, but the carbon intensity of RNG is lower, and in some cases much lower than fossil natural gas. So RNG from biogas is very attractive, and it is really a sustainable energy solution.
Thanks for that excellent overview. The biogas ITC is really a tremendous incentive, and I think your point about the proposed guidance really underscores the need to work with somebody like Foss and Company when underwriting and discussing and developing projects of this nature. Let's now shift gears and focus on the role that tax equity investors play in the growth of the biogas industry. How do tax equity investors facilitate accelerated growth in the biogas and RNG industry?
So, Michael, corporate America has really such a unique opportunity. If they redirect their tax dollars to a biogas project, then they become tax equity investors and they really accelerate the development of this sustainable energy. And, from an investment perspective, they are making a reliable and attractive return on their investment. In this kind of macroeconomic environment that we're in, having reliable and attractive returns on an investment is very positive and in a lot of cases hard to find. But those tax credit dollars are really impactful for developers in the biogas energy space. The cost of borrowing capital is a lot higher. For a developer that has to seek project financing to stand up their biogas project, the infusion of the tax equity investment is really very helpful, to recycle capital, reduce more expensive debt that they might have to carry. And so it translates into a lot of savings from the project developer's perspective, and it really can help them accelerate and develop more projects, which means that, as a nation, we have more renewable natural gas with a lower carbon intensity and really moves the needle to decarbonize the transportation fuel space.
That makes a lot of sense and really seems to fill a gap in the marketplace. What are some of the unique advantages for tax equity investors who invest their tax dollars into bioenergy projects?
Well, I think there's two main advantages that are unique. One is being a tax equity investor, and when that investment comes with a cash flow during the term of the investment, those cash flows are very stable, very predictable. They're supported by long-term offtake contracts. And, one of the aspects that we at Foss are known for is thorough diligence. We do a lot of diligence on the front end of an investment to have surety around the cash flows during the term of the investment. And then the second aspect is that the tax equity investor, because the biogas space is not new technology, but it's a newer investment for a tax credit investor, this really does allow for diversification of their tax credit investment portfolio. So it's an ESG investment. It diversifies their tax credit investments, and it gives them stable and predictable cash flows for the term of the investment.
Well said. I know you touched on this already a little bit, but can you speak a bit more about some ways that policy impacts tax equity participation?
Well, we're really seeing it with these proposed guidance changes that the IRS just released in November. It has introduced some new uncertainty into the space. Now, there's the impact really has been immediate from even project level debt. Entities want to see clarification around the ITC calculation to be able to make a decision. And so having that certainty in terms of policy and regulation really is critical to advance projects, to attract investors, and the uncertainty just has an immediate impact and a pretty deep impact into the space because there's just the certainty around being able to monetize the ITC. In the most extreme case, so there's some projects that are no longer eligible for the ITC, and then if they are eligible, what is the ITC amount? Until we now have, again, more certainty around the ITC calculation, it really has caused a pause on some projects.
It certainly keeps us busy, doesn't it?
It does.
So how does bioenergy development drive the energy transition?
So when we talk about net zero, and the U.S. Has net zero goals, but the pathway to net zero requires more than just the provision of renewable electricity. And certainly an electric grid gets a lot of attention, it gets a lot of focus. At future state, you can envision a fully built out renewable electrical grid and then EV cars, so electric vehicles. But we're not there yet. That might be future state. And so, for current state, being able to employ renewable hydrocarbons with a lower carbon intensity. So right now, we have a built out infrastructure across the U.S. that supports fossil natural gas, and renewable natural gas blends like for like with fossil natural gas. So we don't have to build any new infrastructure to support a hydrocarbon transportation fuel that's got a lower carbon intensity and fits with the system that we have today while we work towards an electrified system for the future. And for specifically for industries, and municipalities, all of the equipment that we currently have in place. So even when you think about your home, and if you're running your dryer or your stove using natural gas, renewable natural gas blends perfectly with those systems that we already have, and there's no requirement for change. It's a like-for-like molecule with fossil natural gas, but it comes with a much lower carbon intensity than fossil natural gas does. This is an immediate solution to help decarbonize transportation fuels, and it makes a useful product out of the waste that we as a species, will continue to produce.
Yeah, I think the like for like aspect is really something that should really help accelerate the RNG industry moving forward because it just lowers the bar for acceptance.
Right.
So we've covered a lot of ground so far, but do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think the bioenergy space in the U.S. Is truly an exciting sector, and it's seen a lot of growth, and it's got a lot of attention with after the passing of the IRA in August of 22. And certainly, tax credits have been used in the U.S. for a long time to incentivize investment into certain areas. It's used as a social engineering tool by the government, and it's certainly had that very positive impact on investment towards the bioenergy, biogas sector, and renewable natural gas. Those are all kind of titles that one could use pretty interchangeably. And this is really an ideal time for corporations to redirect their tax liability to an attractive investment. And, an investment in renewable energy, bioenergy projects being one of those opportunities. And just overall, tax credit investors really have a pivotal role and a unique ability to accelerate the development of sustainable energy and really lower carbon intensity of our transportation fuels and have almost an immediate impact to decarbonize transportation fuels, because these projects, they don't take very long to stand up and they're not as expensive. So the acceleration is more feasible than some of the really big decarbonization projects that we've heard about being developed in the US. And so it's really an opportunity if we could engage more corporations that have been paying their tax liability to, come to the table as a tax credit investor and direct their tax liability into an investment that has an attractive return and really be a force for good to stand up more projects in renewable energy, sustainable technology. There'd be more acceleration. So it's really, a very collaborative future where the tax equity investors really have such a role in shaping what our sustainable energy landscape is going to look like, and really support the developers in the bioenergy space and renewable natural gas to, help them in a project finance way that only a tax credit investor can do, and accelerate and have more projects so that, a larger percentage of the transportation fuel we use could come from renewable natural gas projects.
Great insights, Dawn. As we wrap up, it's clear that the intersection of tax equity and bioenergy is not only shaping the future of energy, but also driving positive change for our planet. We hope our listeners found today's discussion inspiring and informative. Remember, the power to accelerate the energy transition lies in collaboration and informed action. Whether you're a developer with a vision or an investor seeking impactful opportunities, exploring the world of tax equity and bioenergy could be your next step towards a cleaner and greener future. A big thank you to Dawn for sharing her invaluable insights and to all our listeners for joining us on this episode.
Thanks so much, Michael. It was great to visit with you about RNG and biogas. And if any listeners have any questions or want to learn more, please feel free to reach out and follow us on LinkedIn.
Stay tuned for more exciting discussions on the horizon.